The 7th section in the legislation is related to monitoring and compliance. So once the legislation is passed and we've developed the standards and people are trying to obey the legislation, we need to make sure that we watch closely to make sure that the accessibility legislation is working and that the systems that we've set up are working. So we need to come up with ways to make sure that people are obeying the law. So just to give an example, do you remember, well, some of us probably remember when seatbelt law came in. How many of us remember when seatbelt laws came in? And at first it was like
1985.
That's right. You remember the date. I don't even remember the date. That's really good. So, you know, before that we never wore seatbelts. And at first it was like, oh man, we have to wear these things. But we knew what the legislation said, right? The legislation said that everybody has to wear seatbelts. And after time, most people do. But every once in a while, the police do checks to make sure that we're wearing our seatbelts, right? So we need to make sure that people are going to obey the law as it relates to the accessibility legislation. And we need to put in place ways to make sure that people do follow the law. So here are some ways that we can do that. We can use, this is what the panel is suggesting. We can use a complaints-based system, meaning that if you know what the rules are and somebody's not following the rule, then you can complain to somebody and say, hey, they're not following the rule. That's a complaints-based system. We can set timelines for compliance. That means we can say, okay, you have the next 2 years to make sure that you have, let's use as an example, flashing lights in your building so that deaf people will be alerted to an emergency. You have 2 years to do that. So after that 2 years is up, then somebody will go around and check to see who has those lights up. So that is another way that we can make sure that people are following the line, by checking, like setting a time frame and then checking to make sure people have done it in that time frame. We could create a checklist based on the principle of universal design. So we could say that in order for something to be universally designed, you have to make sure that this, and this is done. And then you check it off. Yep, that's done, that's done, that's done, that's done. So we know. So we could create checklists. We could communicate very clearly about what needs to be done and why it needs to be done. So again, that means communicating in a whole bunch of different ways, right? So if we want the deaf community to know, we have to make sure that we do it in American Sign Language. So again, we can assess where people are now, currently, and we can assess how they've improved over time. So it might be now that they have no flashing lights in the building. 2 years later, they might have the strobe lights up. So that would be progress. They also said they don't want to see money taken from other budgets to pay for monitoring. In other words, let's say that the department that is responsible for monitoring progress in implementing the legislation says, okay, we're going to take $50,000 from that budget and we're going to move it over into this budget to monitor the legislation. They're saying you have to find new money to do this work. So those are some ideas that the panel had around compliance and monitoring. So again, you need to think about, well, how should we monitor people? How should we make sure that government and businesses are following the law? Any questions about that section? Yes.
The concern I have with that is that I have a condo and I don't have any flashing alarm system, smoke detectors, flashing alarm. I rely on a person who's not deaf to help me with that. There was a fire in the housing complex and they didn't have insurance, but I had insurance. But I didn't have any emergency equipment to indicate that because I'm not in a financial position to do that. So if I were to set up something like that, where would I find the funds to do that? I guess it depends on the age of your condo, the building that you're in. Well, it's quite old, but.
Yeah. I don't know the answer.
Like there are some apartments that are quite old or old buildings that do not require a smoke detector, fire alarm system, lighting strobes or whatever. But any new buildings, you know, maybe from the year 2000, any new condos, I think they have to follow the building code. I'm not clear on that. I'm just asking, you know, what the rules are on that.
I don't know the answer either. I could find out for you, but I don't know the answer. Ryan?
Again, that would really apply to the public buildings, not really private buildings. Like, for example, I'm a homeowner. What are the rules, again, you know, for the public? Does that apply also to my private home, or do the rules apply? You know, that's, again, very vague. It's not quite clear, cut clear. As an example, you know, the building code says you have to have fire smoke detectors or what have you in certain buildings. Like in my home, I have to have smoke detectors. They said it would have to be in the hallway, and they said, well, no, it doesn't. I said, well, what about the bedrooms? They said it doesn't require anything in the bedrooms. So they're not saying where it should be placed, and so I put an extra one, you know, in my bedroom, for example. So it's not. They don't look at it from a depth sensitivity view and in certain buildings, so they just place it anywhere they want. But it may not be in the right position, placed properly in the right position in the home.
There was a lot of discussion about by the panel about, you know, well, does this legislation also include private homes or not? So that's something you need to think about. Should all homes have to be built the same way so that everybody can access them? Or should it be, as we said earlier, voluntary standards for homes saying, if you want your home to be accessible, these are some of the things that you should do to build your home to be accessible. Any other questions about that section? Yep.
My name is John Grant. 2 years ago, my wife and I were looking for an apartment in the Highfield Park area. And I had asked about the same thing, you know, having flashing strobes for fire alarms, for smoke detectors. Because we're both deaf, we can't hear, so we wanted this in place. And the Oxford rental office would not accommodate us. They said they did, did not want to do that. And I said, well, we're deaf, and in the event of a fire, what are we going to do? We won't be able to hear it. And it must have been 3 or 4 or 5 times that emergency vehicles, fire trucks came, and I could hear something, but I didn't know where it was coming from. Without the flashing light, I didn't know what was going on until all the doors in the hallways the emergency doors were closed, and I looked out the window and I saw, oh my goodness, there's all these fire trucks. I didn't know there was anything going on in the building, and so again, it's not safe for us. Even one night I could hear something, I didn't know what it was, and I got up and I opened the door, and here was all these, fire trucks. They're like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and again, we can't hear, so it's not safe. So again, the Oxford office would not allow us to have one in place, and we've been fighting with them for a long time, and it's making me angry.
So, again, it's a good example of, so let's say that we have standards developed that do indicate what the standards are for safety in buildings, condos, for everybody, and including deaf people. And let's say your building doesn't comply with that standard, then there needs to be people who can go and you can complain. You yourself can complain to somebody who's ever in charge of this. You can go and complain and say, hey, my building is not meeting the law. You would be able to complain after the legislation is passed. And then hopefully something would be done to fix that, right? Okay? Ricky?
First of all, there are many deaf individuals who have many concerns about accessibility. And if you confront the powers to be, whether it's government or whatever, again, it's difficult to communicate that to them. And if someone were to go to Betty McDonald as a community social worker and, complain to her, but she has many things on her plate. She's overwhelmed with the work that she has on her plate now, and it's just one individual. It would be nice to hire someone else in that agency, another deaf individual who can advocate and in regards to accessibility, instead of rather just having one individual. And it's just too much work for one person. Also, there are deaf people may not fully understand how to approach and how to communicate. There's still those barriers that are in place.
Yep. But I would hope if we established a place where people could go and complain, you could, and if everything was set up the way we hope it will, you could text that office and say, I have a complaint. And they would say, what is your complaint? You could do it either by text, or if you wanted to go to meet somebody, you should be able to text them and say, I'd like to have a meeting because I have a complaint. I need an interpreter. And they would say, fine, we will contact SDHH&S and we will get an interpreter and you can come in. So that would be an example of a customer service standard that would need to be met. That they would have to provide you with a way to make your complaint in a way that meets your needs, whether that's through texting, whether that's through sign language.
Well, yes, that would be excellent, but there's still a barrier, an accessible barrier, because people who are not deaf can make their phone calls, make their complaints quickly and have that resolved. With a deaf person, you have to have this appointment, which is going to take a week or two, and then you have another appointment, to have an interpreter, and you have another appointment. We would like to have it dealt with immediately. Once that complaint is in place, how do we deal with it immediately?
Well,
so it's still somewhat of a barrier. If you can't get it.
Give me an example of how could that be? Wouldn't the best way to get that resolved be for you to be able to text, or to be able to send in a video message or something, a sign language message that would say, but texting would probably be the best way. Text somebody, but what would be the best way?
I think the best way would be to have that person who is deaf, that you can contact them directly. You know, if it's a hearing person that you know, that's in that complaint office or whatever, you're still going to have a barrier. But if the person was deaf, you could have immediate access to them right now. Grassroots deaf individuals, those who are very strong ASL users, who understand the language. If it's a, you know, a deaf person who works there, they have the knowledge, I'm sure you will find that a lot of deaf people would bring their complaints to them.
Yep, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Okay, we're going into the last section. Brian, did you want to say something?
I'm kind of struggling as to why we're here. We're listening to explain everything, right? So if we have any complaints, should we not hold them till we have the December 3rd meeting? Or should we have a meeting prior to that to bring forward all these concerns that we have, jot down all these concerns, and then have one person bring them forward at the December 3rd session, rather than having a whole line of deaf people go through all their concerns? That would take hours. So if we could have just one person represent the community at that consultation meeting on December the 3rd, would that not be a good suggestion?
You can do it any way you want. If that's what you want as a community, organize a meeting on your own, talk about what you want to do, and you can appoint somebody to come as your spokesperson to speak. That's entirely up to you. You can do it whichever way you want. This meeting today is just to make people understand what's in the discussion document, and then you can go to the sessions in your area. And the one here in Halifax is December 3rd. The other dates are on the website. So we're going to, this week we're going to Wolfville. Clare, we're doing a French-only session. And then we're going to Yarmouth. And then next week we're going to Bridgewater and Truro, Sydney, and Antigonish. And then the following week we're doing Amherst, and then the last session will be here in Halifax on December 3rd. Okay? Last section. The last section is related to,
Do we have to attend that consultation meeting on the 3rd, or can we maybe do it as a vlog or send in our concerns through email?
There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can participate. You can come on December 3rd. You can go on the website and answer the questions right on the website. Just type in your answers and it'll get sent in. You can do a vlog, whichever way you want. Jim.
So you're suggesting that we could probably do a vlog, send in the concerns. Who will it be that be responsible to look at that and interpret those concerns? Is it the committee or?
Very good question. So I'm open to feedback on this, but in my little brain, my thought was that we will wait till the end of the consultation period. We will collect all of the vlogs that come in. We will sit down with Betty and an interpreter, and we will go through those, and we will translate them into English, and it will become part of the feedback. Would that work? I'm open to suggestions.
It has to be somebody who's very, very qualified at being able to interpret the information.
Yep. So can you guys give me some, doesn't have to be now, but after the meeting, if you want to give me some suggestions on how we should do that, I'm totally open to advice. Yes?
What if the deaf individuals do not understand the questions, where the questions are in their second language, English?
That's why we're doing this video. So we're hoping that people will watch these videos on the web and then answer based on this information. All of today is going to go up on the website. I will give it, yeah, I will.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
write the website on
I will.
that would be great.
Yeah.
I was just talking to Colleen, and like, for example, if you're not clear in the question, then we need someone or a group of deaf people or somebody who's very literate to be able to explain that to them, and then they can answer the questions on their own and hand it in. I think that would be important if we could do.
Well, I'm hoping
some-
this will work, doing the videos. And I want your feedback afterwards to find out whether this process works. Betty?
My comment in relation to what Colleen just mentioned, Amy Parsons and I have been in discussion, and I don't know if you remember the VRS survey that we've done recently in the library, and a lot of people answered the questions for the VRS survey. So it would be similar to what we're doing now with the Nova Scotia Legislature, maybe setting up dates and having these consultation meetings, and then this way we can have maybe a computer lab and we can answer the questions, help them with the interpretation of those questions.
You have until December 12th to get your feedback in. So however you guys want to do it, December 12th. Yeah. So if you guys...
December the 12th?
Yeah.
December the 2nd? 12th?
Yeah, okay. So however the deaf community wants to do this, you guys can decide that on your own, how you best want to do it. And why don't you guys discuss with Betty how you want the vlogs to be recorded, and I'll work with whoever. Okay? Okay? Melba?
I'm just not clear. Does the website have a vlog, or are the questions already interpreted in sign language?
There's 3 videos that sort of outline, give you an overview of what we're doing. As I said, going through this today, I'm hoping you'll have enough information to answer the question. The questions are on the website.
They're on there already.
So the questions are on the website. How many questions are there?
They're the same questions really under each section, and I've asked the questions basically after each of these questions today. So, do we have the right principles? Have we missed anything? Do we need to add something? Those are the questions, really.
All right. So with those questions, can we see it in ASL and able to answer it? Can those questions be done in ASL so that we can see it in ASL and then answer those questions?
Yeah, we can look into that. We'll see how we can do that. Yeah.
If you give me the website, I'll look into it as
Okay.
well. I'll help you with that.
Okay.